Right, hi everybody. Welcome to my channel. Perhaps I should say welcome back. There are already, I think, 4 videos on this channel. I uploaded some vaulted recordings from some tournaments that I played like 2 years ago. But since there's been such a long hiatus since I last uploaded any recaps, I probably should let this serve as the introduction to my channel. So hello, I'm Jackson, and this is the commencement of me following through on my resolution to record analysis videos of all of the classical over-the-board rated tournament chess games that I play. And maybe we can track some improvement or, at least glide across the plateau of my rating stagnation. Who knows? But anyways, I recently played a tournament at the Seattle Chess Club, a 4-round Swiss tournament with a time control of 2 hours per side with an increment of 30 seconds per move, so a very long classical time control. I had a couple extremely arduous games, 2 5-hour draws, which we'll see in future videos. And it was an adults-only Swiss, which was nice, because playing kids is just so hazardous to the rating and to the ego. And I had I think, performance that kind of exceeded my expectations, which suffused me with the sufficient motivation to actually, start this recording recap journey. But have faith that at some point I will upload some self-incriminating, very embarrassing losses, hopefully. But in this tournament, I managed to forestall those. All right, let's jump into the first game. This is, I think, the most straightforward game of my tournament, by quite a lot the shortest, against the only opponent I played that was lower rated than me. Sometimes the pairings in these Swiss tournaments can be funny. If you, execute effectively in your first round against like a lower rated pairing, and then you kind of just maintain your performance in the subsequent rounds, like you'll basically endure the whole tournament against people at or above your rating. If you're, I guess, like above 50% in terms of your score. So anyways, my opponent was like a 1300. My rating's around like slightly below 1700. It dipped because my last performance a couple weeks ago was slightly horrifying. And since this was an adults-only tournament, I had, a little bit more trust and security that this rating was actually accurate. But, 1300s are solid players, right? You can't be complacent or lazy against them. You can't expect them to be pushovers. So, we played a very serious, cerebral opening. Did not try to go for any fried liver nonsense, although, of course, it's not actually nonsensical. I just don't know the depths of that, let's say, confounding forest of theory. Like all of this nonsense is just ridiculous. I used to play this a lot, and then I realized I was getting terrible results, and I stopped. On online blitz, that is. So, at any rate, we play a much more prudent opening. We just go for classic gioco pianissimo. My opponent plays kind of slowly with h6, but not really a huge deal. We're just kind of like preemptively jostling, I guess. Like the 2 moves that I made in succession here seem like somewhat cryptic, I guess, and a little bit maybe uninspired or not super desirous of the initiative, right? They're very slow. But basically I wanted to play rook e1, so I blocked knight g4 as well as bishop g4 with h3. h3 is just generally a useful move in these systems because for one thing, it prevents knight g4 with the early attack on this pawn. That's actually not so big of a problem, because if I had just played rook e1 without h3 and we saw knight g4, I actually just immediately have this, which cannot be taken, obviously, because I would be winning, and so it ends up blocking the bishop's vision of the f2's pawn. So there's really no concern with that move. But it has a primary purpose of, in the future, it must be or should be played at some point, because if I ever do hope of playing d4, I don't want to have allowed the bishop to plant itself on g4, because that would inhibit my knight's ability to defend d4, because there would be this pin and potentially black could trade off the knight, the bishop for the knight if they so desired. So we play h3, and then after d6, another slow-ish, like slightly funny move of bishop b3. I saw a thread on Twitter about this a while ago, about how this move, bishop b3 early, seemingly unprovoked, has like sort of sneaky good results. And the reason for that is basically if bishop e6 had been played, I would want to meet that with bishop c2, avoiding the trade, and also leaving open the possibility for my opponent to blunder early on in the game. Like, let's say they play something sort of like sluggishly or lethargic, or just, lackadaisically play something like a6. This loses immediately, right? Because I attack the bishop, captures, bishop must move, doesn't really matter where the bishop moves, and then I have a fork. There you go, right? So yeah, there's that. It's sort of a trap, but it also is a good, solid, long-term strategically good move, independent of the trap, because it adds an additional defender to my e-pawn if I ever do play d4. Yeah. Oops, sorry. But what happened actually in the game was that my opponent played rook e8 first, so I mirrored with rook e1. Then he played this slightly befuddling move of knight back to e7. I really, throughout the game, could not deduce the intent of this move, and even in analysis, I still don't know. And it's never been played before in the Masters database. I'm sure it has in the Legis database, because the Legis database is massive. But it doesn't really accomplish anything. Like, maybe he's trying to sort of wheel the knight around this way to the kingside, but I don't know. That seems a little premature, seeing as this bishop has not developed yet. So I don't really know, but what sort of triggered my alarm bells are, okay, that might be two, embellished. Let's say what caught my attention about this was that it undefends d4, so I can sort of attain the primary battleground move of the opening, which is that kind of white wants to play d4 and black wants to play d5. Probably whoever accomplishes that first will be able to dictate the trajectory of the game. I'm not a super well-versed opening theoretician, so I kind of know one idea in every opening, and the idea that I'm aware of in the gioco piano or gioco pianissimo is that it's nice, white prefers it, they're pleased if they are able to play d4. So I just played d4, seeing as I had ample opportunity and really no reason to reject it, and I did seize sort of just a bigger, more solid center, and thus have control of the center, which according to general principles is a virtue. Yeah, so this is the first interesting sort of tactical moment. We sort of abruptly shifted from a kind of positional opening to a position that is kind of rife with tactics. From afar, before I played d4, I wanted to play bishop d2 after this, and then we could just have a little bit of a trade, and then I have a presence in the center, I have development, I have an open c-file, there are some, I guess, positives about my position, and then maybe this knight is going to do the classic maneuver of either this square or this square. I thought I was, slightly for choice here, but nothing significant. And then the other thing that sort of caught my eye when bishop b4 was played on the board is that there was this possibility of a sacrifice on f7. Ostensibly, this just looks like a puzzle rush tactic to win a pawn, because I'm going to get this bishop back here with a double attack. However, when I was calculating this, let's see if we can visualize this together. Imagine the bishop sacks on f7, right? The king recaptures, and then I play queen b3 check with the double attack. What was sort of like dashed my aspirations in this position was the kind of like shocking, unexpected move, knight e to d5, blocking the diagonal on which my queen is checking the king. And this move is kind of like sensational because it totally kills my attack and prevents me from me immediately winning the piece, which is like pretty scary. I'll play it out on the board. Let's say we take, king takes here and here, because of course my back rank development is stunted. I can't capture here. We can very quickly go through that. Like, this is very obvious. I just lose, I lose a piece, and actually probably can lose the piece in a even worse way, right? Like, I'll, lose a full rook. Because of how slow my development was, these pieces are stagnant. So of course I can't capture, and then I also can't capture this because then, the queen was the piece that was actually performing the pinning. So if I move the queen, this knight is no longer pinned. Like, this sounds like a, just like an obvious fact, but this is like I think, surprisingly common miss in like lower level, beginner tactics. They like forget that the pinning piece actually needs to, keep doing its job of holding the pin. Because I would just lose the queen. So I can't immediately win back my piece. The engine finds a way to like preserve equality with rook e3, but my position is no longer very special and probably slightly better for black, because even though there's this pin here, they can break the pin, and then sure, I'll take, and now it's very tricky, because if I move currently my rook is I guess hanging, right? It's attacked, and there's also this x-ray that potentially lends itself to some discoveries on my queen, which is, scary. So, I did see most of that. Like, I saw the important move, which is that knight ed5 completely, dumps a bucket of cold water on my attack. That this move is just really, really a cold shower. And so I didn't go for what is, I guess, like on its face, sort of the attractive, enticing tactical fireworks. I decided to be more principled and, disciplined, play in a more prudent manner. I just decided to play knight c3 here instead of bishop d2, because I thought my opponent probably would not want to trade, because that leaves me with an extremely strong center. And I thought maybe it would be nice to keep, a bishop pair just for future attacking chances. And then in actually, I think a couple of moves, my opponent ended up making a few more, just like, actually, I think literally on the next move, my opponent made a pretty severe tactical blunder or mistake, which was by playing this move d5. I actually, like, d5 itself is a bad move strategically, but the follow-up that he played illustrated, I think, like a greater just, misunderstanding of like the foundations of the move, because the problem for black here is I can simply take this pawn. And probably when he played this move, he was looking to sort of chip away at my center and kind of reasoned that, well, there's a lot of defenders of this pawn, right? Like I have some attackers, but I have 3 attackers, but my opponent has 3 defenders, which should be good enough. However, the shortcoming is that, okay, let's say, Black's only recourse here, or way to preserve material equality and enable him to recapture the pawn, is to take here first, eliminating a defender, and then, all right, like, yeah, now, wait a minute, hang on a second. Let me make sure that I don't mess this up. Takes, oh yeah, like this, okay, sure. So yeah, I gave a little teaser of the back rank tactics. The short of it is that Black has some back rank problems, and I'll show one really sort of implausible, I'll show one really sort of contrived line that hopefully my opponent would not have stumbled into in the game, just to illustrate how, I guess, deep Black's problems run. If my opponent had taken with this knight first, that just immediately loses because I can capture this rook, and regardless with check, right, and regardless of what Black recaptures with, I don't know, let's go like this, he ends up losing a piece because I, via this check, sort of removed a defender from the d5 pawn. And so because of that, Black should take on c3 first. My opponent didn't do that, but also didn't blunder the worst possible, like, ridiculous line that I just showed that loses a piece. He did something that just ends up losing a pawn. I shouldn't take this way first because then this bishop sees this rook. But what I can do is take with the bishop first. And this, let's say, invites sort of the same, like, Black is still susceptible to all the same dangers if he immediately recaptures here. Obviously can't recapture the queen. If recaptures the knight, I take on e8 with check, removing the defender, and then my rook is no longer here, so it's not vulnerable to this attack from the bishop, and then I win a piece. So, like, when the risk was more immediate, my opponent realized that he can't just lose a piece, so here he decides to capture. But then I think actually, I don't know if he missed this from afar or if he was just sort of playing out moves and trying to, locally not make any immediately game-losing mistakes. But potentially what also could have been overlooked is that I have a desperado sacrifice here. I'm going to lose this bishop on the next move, so I may as well give it away with check. And this will actually lead to me winning a pawn. Because takes. And then here, I, obviously at some point need to recapture this bishop because I'm down a piece. And there were 2 checks to consider. I think this is actually the most intriguing tactical moment in the game. I actually opted for the wrong move. This is the only move that the Lichess engine considered a mistake of mine. I kind of crudely figured that, well, if I play this knight check, I advance forward, I expand, essentially for free, with tempo. I just get a completely free move to move forward because it's with check and this bishop is dying. But, and this is what happened in the game, so I'll return to it in a second, what the engine prefers, which I actually was not able to calculate thoroughly in the game, is this move queen b3 check. And the reason I dismissed this idea is because I thought that if this knight blocks, there really isn't any, there's no, remaining, immediate attack to be made. But I should have just, I guess, really the root cause of me missing this was that I figured, I must already be winning, thus knight e5 should be good enough. I'm not going to think too hard about this. But I really should have. It's important to be precise. Because this position is completely winning, and what I played is also, definitely winning, but maybe not as quickly. I thought that this blocking with the knight kind of helps helps black defend and also, develop their pieces on less awkward squares, because maybe this is coming soon. But what I failed to realize is that this queen needs to maintain contact with the knight, right? So if I take here first, it must be captured with the king, because if the queen takes it, I take this knight with check, and then I also get to pick up this bishop later, and I'm just up a full piece. So if I were to take here, we would have to have king takes, and then after, let's say, I don't know, after I capture this, essentially black's problem is that, as opposed to the line I played in the game, their king is more in the center. We can run through an example, let's say, okay, this is obviously bad, right? If the king goes down the same diagonal, this just looks hazardous. I get a lot of development, and only after I'm able to centralize all of my pieces and bring everything remaining into the attack does the king escape to the side. We can also take a look at this one. If king goes to f8, I guess not seizing on maybe its only chance to skirt this diagonal. We can still go c4, knight will drop back, and then we get to place this bishop on the long diagonal, and I think this diagonal should just be decisive. There's really nothing black can do the attack, even though I only have 4 pieces really remaining. My center is huge, and the king should be very vulnerable. There's one very funny line that I was meaning to show. So let's say queen takes. Obviously, a king takes is the much more sensible move, but let's say queen takes, and then there's a very desperate way that black can try to cling to material equality, which is, let's say I take here, which momentarily gives me back my piece. So now I'm no longer down a piece, but black's bishop is still hanging. So let's say that black blocks with the bishop, threatening my queen, so that they'll have the time to escape with their bishop. I give another check, right? We have to keep blocking the checks with attack on the queen, because otherwise I'll just be able to take this bishop for free at some point and be up material. So this is the line that black must go down after playing queen e8 if they want to keep their relative equality. And it gets kind of insane. There's a cool mating net here with queen takes h6, which is not a check. So let's say the bishop retreats somewhere, probably to a5 is fine. We give a check here. If we go, well, there's only 2 choices, right? This leads to immediate mate with bishop h6. So the king must come up, and if we come up, we play sort of a quiet move that is not actually a check, and this is very nice. We play a check first, and then we play a quiet move that's not a check. We play, let's see if you can find it. It's a pretty simple, well, I also have the moves over here. Decently simple mating nets, but maybe not something, that you would consider at first pass. Just, the calm, collected, cool move. Queen to h4, and mate is completely unavoidable. There's nothing we can do to prevent. I think that there are 2 mates. I think you can go to f4 or to g4, right? Yeah, queen f4 mate or queen g4 mate. There's 2 mates. Okay, that's a silly line. None of that happened. Okay, let's return to the game. I played the inaccurate knight e5. Unfortunately, king retreats. Take the bishop. I'm up a pawn. I have this knight that is sort of on an outpost, but also, well, not really an outpost because it can be assailed by black's knight. But it looks like a powerful square for the knight, right? It's supported by a pawn, and it's like penetrating black's position, seeing a lot of critical, sensitive squares. So as a result of that, black attempts to trade it off. I want to trade on my terms. Black threatens my bishop, so I just drop the bishop back. And then this was kind of funny. Like, my opponent played this move thinking it was sort of innocuous and got up to go use the bathroom or something. And then only in this position did I finally start to again consider queen b3 check, which I had dismissed before because I thought that on queen, like, let's say when way back in this position, I thought that if this move was played, there was just bishop e6 blocking, and then I've achieved nothing. But yeah. But in this position, oops, let's go here. Now that the queen has, I guess this is the key feature, the queen has vacated d8, right? Because now, after this move, I can go for the check, and of course, the safer, more resilient response for black would just be to move the king. But I kind of figured like he sort of looked a little bit checked out after just being down a pawn, and like this is just a slightly hopeless position for black. Might try to just make the really rudimentary like the rudimentary sort of like caveman chess style intuitive bishop block. But this was just a nice like bit of calculation on my part, little mental warm-up, not a particularly difficult little tactical shot. We have a simple fork with d5. And there's only really a couple important things to consider. The reason that this works, well, there's a couple. First of all, this pawn is no longer able to be taken because the queen is not on d8 anymore. There's only one piece that could take it, and I would just be able to recapture with my queen. The other interesting thing is that, of course, because the bishop is on the e-file now, that actually cut off the rook's defense of the e5 square. So this would just win a piece for me as well, or actually two pieces. And then the final thing which transpired in the game is the sort of danger levels move with, leaving the bishop hanging with knight a5. But, I saw this through to the end, eliminated any sort of wrinkles. And the final move of the game was queen b5, which just attacks the knight. The queen is no longer vulnerable to any attack, and if it were to be nudged, it could just capture the knight on the next move. And the bishop is still hanging, and so in this position, on move 22, my opponent resigned. So yeah, very clean start to the tournament. Can't really complain much about this game. There was the one sort of interesting line, if I wanted to be very precise and surgical about my attack, I should have played queen b3 rather than knight e5. But otherwise, not much to be dissatisfied with. So yeah, that was game one.